there were some very many, very good drawings that we had to pick up on. But they were all extremely amazing. Really happy that nothing happened.
So, saya sangat happy yang nilai itu.
Hello everyone, I'm Sudeepthi Vardhan from Atheist Center, Vijayawada. We have with us Mr. Logan Hunt from Clinton School of Public Service, USA. So Logan, where are you from and what is the purpose of your visit?
I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm here working with Architects Mandal as part of my master's program with the Clinton School.
Okay.
So I'm here for 2 to 3 months to do a project with them. I'm working on a livelihood program and doing an evaluation of that.
Okay. How did you come to know about this organization?
So actually, Architects Mandal has had students from the Clinton School previous years.
Okay.
So I knew of them through those connections with the school.
Okay.
So I knew people had worked with them previously, and
Okay.
I reached out to them through that.
Okay, okay. So what are your first impressions here?
Of the organization, or?
The organization.
Okay, it's very different than nonprofits in the U.S. in some ways, especially the more holistic approach.
Okay.
So instead of picking one issue and saying, this is what we do,
Okay.
like we want to solve homelessness, instead ASM says, well, we want to just improve the quality of life overall.
Okay.
So livelihood, women's empowerment, any other number of programs. So it's more a holistic approach, which is pretty different than the U.S.
Okay.
Probably better too, actually.
Okay.
So that's my initial thoughts on it.
Okay.
It's different, but not in a bad way.
Oh yes. Have you taken part in any of the events that took place at Atheist Center, like essay writing competitions?
Okay, yeah.
So
through like the Gora Science Center.
Yes.
Yeah, I've taken part with Dr. Nianta through several programs.
Okay.
In the World Environment Day, we had a drawing competition, and so I took part in that. And I didn't participate, but I spoke at it and helped judge afterwards. With the World Environment Day, they had a march in conjunction with the local
pollution.
Yeah, the local pollution department.
Yes.
So I took part in that march with that and attended the speeches afterwards. I'm sure there's some other ones I'm trying to think off the top of my head though.
Okay.
But anytime there's an event on campus, I try to attend it. And I've come to the hospital to attend a couple of the speakers on Saturday at noon.
Okay.
I've been to several of those. All very good.
Okay. So have you had any interactions with the students who have come to participate here?
Yeah. So I've interacted quite a bit with the girls at the school on campus with us.
Okay.
Because they come to a lot of the programs, and I've gotten where I've recognized a few of them, and they're even on campus sometimes, so they'll say, like, scream at me and say hi whenever they see me.
Okay.
But even other schools too. There are a couple of students who come over and over again, and
Okay.
I always try to talk to them and encourage them to come to all the other programs as well. So.
Okay, so have you gone through the drawings in
Yeah, for the drawing competition.
competitions? Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, I helped judge.
Okay,
The World Environment Day one. I don't know how many there were, like 100 probably.
So like programs like these, do you conduct there over at your place?
In the U.S.?
Yes. in awareness programs?
Not so much.
Okay.
There are awareness programs, but they're a little bit different. So there's not so much focus on the schools at all, really.
Okay.
Like I said, most organizations in the U.S. are like they have a single focus.
Okay.
So the organizations that focus on, say, students or bullying, anything that relates to children or teenagers, they have a lot of programs like that where they're in the schools and working with them. But a lot of organizations don't really do that. There's also a funding problem where not a lot of organizations can do that, really. Like there's that barrier to entry.
Okay.
So not really in the U.S., not so much.
Okay, okay. How do you find it? I mean, is this kind of approach useful for kids, for students, because they are going to be the next generation, and when they have an idea about say, let's say pollution, the topic would be pollution. So do you think if we conduct these drawing competitions or essay writing competitions, would create an awareness to the kids?
Yeah, I think it's really good actually to involve not just the specific people who it may impact right now, but the people who, like you're saying, like the future, and in 20 years, take the example of pollution, it's going to be much worse than it already is if we keep at the same level. Not only does it raise awareness, some people might not know about the problems of pollution at all. But it also, even the kids who do know about it, it might ignite some kind of like flame in them to like, okay, I really care about this topic, so I want to study environmental science or public policy relating to environmental problems. So I think it's good to reach out to those people who, may otherwise not know about it, or even if they do know about it, may not really understand the significance of, again, going back to pollution, how much of an issue this will cause when you're raising your kids, or say you're in your 30s, and whatever it might be.
Yes. And, so have you been to any field visits with Arctic Samta Mandal?
I've went to Srikakulam, a few other towns, villages I can't remember the name of or really know how to pronounce.
Okay.
But I've been to quite a few different places at this point, and it's kind of a shock coming from the U.S., even though I come from a very rural area where farming is like 80% of the jobs, just like in the villages.
Okay.
Still though, like the quality of life maybe is so different. Like I didn't expect to see houses with thatch roofs still, or no indoor plumbing. I mean, I knew these things were happening, but at the rate at which it happens, it's kind of surprising, because in the U.S. we have none of that, and even here in the city in Vijayawada, it's pretty standard to have electricity and like running water, at least all the places I've been to. So to see even the difference between the city in India and the village is pretty dramatic.
Yeah. So how do you find it different from your place?
So like I was saying, there are quality of life things that are different, like the running water and electricity. So that's a big one. I think I was really surprised about was the number of just dirt roads. Like I think one of the villages that we visited out of like 5 or 6 had an actual paved road going through it, and the rest were just all dirt. Excuse me. Which to me, like my parents tell me stories about growing up in the 60s and 70s in rural U.S. And then you hear stories about that, like, oh yeah, we didn't have paved roads, it was all dirt. I'm like, okay, that makes sense, I guess. But then here I'm like, okay, that's still the reality for a significant portion of the population.
Yes.
But in a lot of ways, it's very similar too. It's like the way that people spend their free time, the way that the kids, like the way that they spend their free time out of school too. You see kids running around and playing. I'm like, okay, that's pretty much exactly what we did when I was going through school. Like when we would get out of class, just get in a gang of kids and run wild.
Yes.
So, I mean, there are obvious differences, but a lot of similarities too, actually. That's kind of like human nature, those. We're all kind of the same when it comes to it.
What about sex education? It is still considered a taboo? Is it still considered a taboo there?
So, it varies widely depending on the area of the country.
Okay.
So, in the north, northeast, west coast, where it's much more liberal, like say California, New York, sex education is, obviously I haven't lived in these places, but from their policy stance, it's much more open. Like they have classes dedicated to sex education, starting at a very young age. So for us it's middle school, for y'all it would be 5th class maybe, like 12 years old about.
12 years, yeah.
I'm not sure what class that is.
10 would be 5th class, 12 would be 7th.
Okay, about 7th class.
7th class.
Usually it starts there and kind of, you'll get like maybe 1 or 2 classes more through high school. And as the students get older, it's a little bit more in-depth because as they start to learn more about sex, they need more guidance on it. But in the areas like where I'm from, the Deep South, you have a lot more conservative elements in the society. You have a lot more religiosity as well. So Christianity is very strong in some areas, which isn't necessarily bad.
Yes.
But when it comes to sex education, a lot of Christian politicians promote abstinence only, which abstinence is like just withholding, like don't have sex at all. It doesn't work. We look at the rates of teenage pregnancy and teen STDs, STIs, and in the states that promote abstinence only, all of those are much higher than the states that actually teach proper scientific sex education. Because in these states, like, they're going to have sex no matter what. Like, it's what teenagers do and have been doing for thousands of years. So they do it, but they don't have the education to say, well, how do we do it safely? So then you have high rates of teen pregnancy and STDs, STIs. So we see the abstinence only education doesn't work. So you can't just tell kids, don't do it. So you're like, okay, I'm not going to listen. Like where I'm from, we had one class in 6th grade, I think, like 12 years old. It was one day, and your parents could sign a slip to make you not attend it for religious reasons. My parents didn't do that; they didn't care, which was good, you know.
Yes.
So I went to, and looking back, I'm like, you don't really learn much. Like a lot of it, where I grew up, anyway, was like shock value. So they would show pictures of, here's what this STD looks like on your genitalia. It's like, okay, well that's horrible. But it's the same with like the war on drugs in the U.S. People say, this is what smoking does to your lungs. And it's like, yeah, it looks bad, but if you don't provide a proper reason for, well, here's the long-term consequences rather than just a shock image, the kids still don't really understand why it's a big deal. And then I had one other class, it lasted for like 1 semester, so 4 or 5 months. Just a general health education class I took in my senior year, so my final year. But you could take it as early as 9th grade, I think. And it covers that very shortly. and it kind of depended on which teacher you got, because some teachers would say, okay, we have to talk about sex education this week, just read the book, I'm not going to talk about it, because of they have like moral convictions to not talk about it, which you shouldn't really have if you're a teacher. You shouldn't say, I can get out of teaching this because it offends me.
Yes.
So, like, if you got a bad teacher, well, you're kind of out of luck. You just miss, because the students aren't going to sit there and read 50 pages in a book. It just doesn't happen. I had a teacher who did actually teach it, but even still, it was very basic. And by that age that I took it, I was 18, so you kind of learn about it on your own by that point. The kids who took it younger than me at like 15, 16 may have helped, but I think in the U.S., I've read anyway, I don't know how up to date this is because it's been a few years, but the majority of people start becoming sexually active about 15, 16, in the 15 to 17 in that range. So if you can put off taking that class until you're 18, that doesn't help the age when you first start, which is kind of the most important to reach them. So that's what it's like in the U.S. It really depends on where you're at. A lot of states are very conservative, and they don't want to promote that. Even though we have studies showing that it happens either way, like it's better to teach them how to do it safely. They still say they're on the idea that if we talk about it at all, it normalizes it, and then it happens. But we know it happens either way. So
promotion of safe sex would be a better idea at the age of 12, 13. It would be good if they start at the age of 12.
Yeah, ideally. At least introductory. You don't have to go into every detail. Because a lot of it would just go over the students' heads at that age. But at least introduce it and say, here's what you should know, the basics. Like, this is what condoms are. STDs are a thing, and here's the long-term consequences it could have.
Teen pregnancy also.
Yeah. That's a little bit off the question that you asked, but teen pregnancy is very taboo in the U.S. in a lot of areas. There are some public schools even who a student got pregnant at like the age of 17, 18, and the school has declined them to walk for graduation because they got pregnant. A lot of times the schools reverse that decision once public outreach kind of comes out, but still the fact that that could happen shows how much of a taboo it still is in America, which a lot of people think of the U.S. as super progressive. In some ways, sure, but in other ways, especially in certain areas, you still have these like strong codes of conservatives.
So is teen abortions or any kind of abortions considered illegal?
Okay, again, it's like dependent on the state.
Area.
Yeah, because we have, the way the U.S. government is set up is we have the federal, and then like in India we have individual states. But states have a lot more rights in the U.S. than in India. They're a lot more autonomous. So some states are pretty open with abortion, or like the morning after pill, which is an abortion. But it often gets lumped in with it. So depending on the state, like if it's allowed at all, the cutoff deadline could be anywhere from like 6 weeks, which is pretty early, to 12 weeks, to wherever like the cutoff is. But again, in a lot of conservative states, especially within the last year with the rise of Trump and that sort of far-right movement, there's been a push to completely overturn Roe versus Wade, which was the Supreme Court decision in the 60s, 70s that declared abortion was a legal right. So they're starting to try to push to overturn Roe v.
Yes.
Wade. In many states, I don't know the number off the top of my head, it's outright banned. Like no abortion at all is allowed. I think Arkansas may be like that. And I'm not really sure. It changes so frequently too. It's difficult to keep up with each state's laws. And then going back to like the morning after pill, it's not abortion,
Yeah.
but a lot of states still
Prevention.
require a doctor's prescription of it. So for teenagers, it's not really possible for them to go to a doctor, especially in the U.S. where we don't have socialized medicine. Like just the visit alone could cost $100, let's say. I don't know the exact number. But then the prescription could be who knows how many hundreds of dollars. So it's not really a possibility, especially since teenage pregnancy happens more in poor families or like children who grow up in the inner city where the schools aren't properly funded, or in the rural deep south where the education isn't funded by the state. This is where you see the highest rate of teenage pregnancy. So they can't afford to go to the doctor and say, hey, can you give me the morning after pill? And even if they could afford it, there's still the social stigma of like they risk being kicked out of the family by their parents. There's a lot of teenage homelessness because of reasons like that. So it's, again, it depends on the state, but in my area, it's still heavily
Illegal.
Yes.
What is your area of work from Clinton School? I mean, which areas you work there? What is your main concern in the society?
So, in the past, I've worked with like food security, so soup kitchens, that sort of thing, doing volunteer management and some coordination of food delivery. I just finished a project recently with a local transitional shelter. So it's not a full-time homeless shelter, but it's a shelter that, excuse me, takes in people who or help them transition from being homeless to having their own place to live, having their own job. I worked with a team from the school we developed a peer mentorship program for people coming out of prison. So in the U.S., the prison system is very corrupt, basically. We have private prisons who, buy off judges to send more people to their prison so that they can make more money. And there's a system where once you get in, it's difficult to come out of prison and successfully re-enter society. So there's a lot of need for assistance in getting a job, getting a place to live, getting back on your feet. And so, peer management is one of the best ways to do that because they can go to other people who went through the same thing that they did, in this case being in prison, and saying, well, how did you manage to get back on your feet after getting out and to not fall right back into the same crowd? Like if all of your friends and family are into drugs or crime, which unfortunately is the case in a lot of poor areas because there's not the government support for them to do anything otherwise. But they need that assistance to say, how did you manage to get out of this system, like out of this loop? And so we came up with a program to help them make those connections. And like I said, now I'm working with ASM to evaluate their livelihood program. And so that's kind of my past projects and currently. In the future, right now I'm working on finalizing a project when I get back to the U.S. to work with another shelter specifically for women who have come out of domestic abuse relationships. So I'm working on creating a outreach program because a lot of people in the community don't know about the work that the organization does or how to get in touch with them if they are in need of the services. So that's what I'm working on right now. Long term, who knows what I'll work on, but that's the immediate.
Okay. What about the case studies? Have you spoken to people?
Yeah, so I've interviewed over 30 people
Okay.
since I've been in India. with
Okay.
them. These include past employees of ASM who worked on various projects, so I could kind of get an insight into, well, what are the specifics of each program, current employees too, and then a lot of the beneficiaries to several programs. So when ASM had a partnership with Plan International or
SCF.
ICF, the students who, through that program, their education was paid for, and they were able to pull themselves up from like very lower class to middle and upper middle class in some cases. So I've interviewed a lot of them to see how much impact the program actually had. You know, 'cause it doesn't do any good to have a program if when you ask the people, like, how did it work for you? And they're like, not so good, and nothing changed. So it's very good to see that the people who were involved with are saying, I wouldn't be here otherwise if it wasn't for ASM
Okay.
and their programs, because there's no way I could have afforded to get an education. I probably would have dropped out at 10th standard, probably wouldn't have even done intermediary. And a lot of them say, my parents were day laborers or day wage earners. I forget what you call them. But they say, I definitely would have been doing the same thing.
Yes.
The men say that a lot. A lot of the women say, I probably would have been married off at the age of 15,
14.
and just been confined to my husband's home, really. Maybe did weaving to earn a little bit of supplemental income if I had the opportunity, but in a lot of cases, it seems like they don't think that would have even been a possibility. They think they basically would have become a baby making machine,
Yes.
to put it crudely. They think I would have been married off as a young teenager, and then my only use would have been to have children from my husband. So it's good to see that a lot of people have been pulled up from that poverty, have gotten new opportunities through ASM and their work. It kind of shows an overall incline in the Indian society. From the people I've talked to anyway, seem to believe that. There's a lot more acceptance of women's rights, and you know, it's a slow process, and it's not just in India. Even in the U.S., we're slowly, you know, talking about abortions earlier, we're still fighting for women to have rights over their bodies.
Okay.
It's a slow fight, but it seems like India today, compared to 20 years ago, is getting better, which
Yes.
is good to see
Definitely, yes.
for everyone's sake. It's really good to see that.
Yes. Any new input? Did you get any new input after talking to these people and working with the ASM? Like,
Yeah.
which can help you with your work there?
Which can help me with my personal work
Yeah,
in the
no,
US.
personal and also social work.
Yeah, that's what I mean by personal, yeah. So yeah, like I said, my next project is with an abused women's shelter. And I've spent a lot of time talking with various people from ASM who worked either directly, like housing women in the same situation, or in similar situations, like getting them a livelihood so that they're not dependent on their husband, and they don't feel like they have to stay if they're in an abusive relationship just because they have no other choice. There are a lot of things that ASM has done or is currently doing that, I said earlier that it's very holistic in its
yes.
approach. I think that's something that more organizations in the U.S. need to take on instead of being so focused on like we need to be like get this one issue solved. It's like, well, to solve this issue, we have to solve these 5 issues, and those 5 issues have 5 each more. So there's a lot that when I talk to like Miss Gora, she tells me all this stuff. I'm like, okay, that's very different than the way we do it in the U.S. But I actually think it's much more effective because you're treating the causes and not the symptoms. So even like my manager at the next project I'm working on, or that I'm planning to work on, I've spoken with her, and planning my project, we've talked about like, well, this is an issue with the organization and we're trying to figure out how to address it. I say, well, the organization I'm currently working with has done this and it worked out very well for them. Have you all considered that? And on a few issues they've been like, no, actually we haven't thought of that. I'm like,
Okay.
well, it's a good idea. And if it doesn't work, well, what you're doing right now doesn't work either, so it doesn't hurt to try something new.
Yes.
If it doesn't work, well, go back to the drawing board, try something else. But if it does work, well, you're improving the life of a lot of the women who you're trying to help.
Yes.
So it's already starting to help me. I can see it in future projects too, being in that same situation of, well, when I was in India, we did this, and that may be a good idea here. At least try it out.
Okay.
So I can see it to continue helping me in my own personal, social work, like you called it. So yeah, it's very good, very good.
Okay. Your final thoughts about Atheist Center and the family and the organizations. You have seen multiple organizations here like Athik Samta Mandal, Vasavya Nursing Home, Mahila Mandali. And so what are your final thoughts?
Yeah. So a lot of the people I've interviewed, the beneficiaries, the former employees, several of them have created their own organizations after leaving ASM or after finishing their education with ASM. And the one thing that everyone tells me is like, oh, they treated me so well when I worked with ASM. Like, I wish if the opportunity arose, I would like to go back to work with them. Or they say, I'm still involved with their programs in a non-official capacity. And I've really seen the same thing. Like, again, it's different from the U.S. because a lot of organizations they almost run like corporations, where it's like, you come to work from 9 to 5, you do your job, then you leave.
Okay.
And there's no personal connection to the job. And that's kind of a problem that nonprofits have in the U.S. is we have high turnover rates. So it's difficult to keep people employed, especially since a lot of the positions require high degrees of education. You're already working in this tiny, tiny market of people who are qualified. And then you have high turnover rates. It makes it difficult to effectively or efficiently run a nonprofit. Whereas here, even I've seen, like, I live on the same compound as the Gora family, and I eat every meal with y'all, and anytime I need anything, I can go talk to Miss Now and Dr. Nianta, Dr. Vijay, like, anybody is completely open. It's so different than in the U.S., but I'm like, it's much better too. There's no resentment with the organization you work for. Being like, I'm being overworked. If there's ever a problem, like, we just got out of May and June. And the heat was ridiculous, like, especially coming from the U.S. where we don't see 45 degrees really. There were days where I was like I just can't go into the field today, like, for my own health. Like, I'm so dehydrated from the heat. And it's never, well, you have to do this because we're telling you you have to. It's always like, okay, the health of the individual comes first.
Yes.
And I think that's something that could really help with the U.S. And I'm very happy to have picked an organization to work with that is more of like a family dynamic than I'm your boss, you do what I say, if you don't like it, leave. And like I said, everyone I've spoken to who worked here, that's the one common denominator with everybody. Yes, they all love to work here, and so I'm really happy with my experience. And you know, I've never left the U.S. before I came here, so I was a little bit worried. Like,
Okay.
well, we'll see what India's like, or if I'd chosen anywhere else, that too. Unless it was Europe that was similar enough, there was always a little bit of hesitation of like, well, who knows what experience this is going to be. But it's been very easy to transition into life here, and I think a lot of that was because of the support from the Gora family and the other employees too of ASM that I work with. So yeah, I'm very happy with the experience overall.
Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Jai Insan.
మరిన్ని కొత్త వీడియోల కోసం మా ఛానల్కి సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయండి, క్రింద ఉన్న బెల్ ఐకాన్ని యాక్టివేట్ చేయండి.